Opportunity here in the sunny state of Arizona to take the most hostile solar utility company and flip it overnight to the most sunny and solar-friendly utility in the nation. SRP is having its new board elections coming April 2nd. Join us for this series of talks with SRP board candidates and learn how you can help join in this cause. Let's go. Welcome everybody to the Fusion Power Podcast. I'm excited about today's episode. We have a huge SRP election coming up in April. And today I am joined by our guest. This is Mrs. Lauren Kuby, who is running as a candidate to be on the SRP board. Lauren is a pro-solar candidate, so we're really excited to talk to her and what we're going to be able to get going here with this next election. So Lauren, welcome to the show today. We appreciate you coming.
So glad to be here.
So I want to talk a little bit about your background. You're definitely a clean energy advocate.
Sure.
It sounds like that's been a passion. Can you kind of just talk to us about what got you interested in clean energy and renewals? Where are you at on that?
Part of it's an academic interest. I'm a senior global future scientist at ASU. Actually, I retired from ASU, but still have that designation. And over the course of 25 years at ASU, I led community engagement and outreach for the Global Institute of Sustainability Innovation. And ASU is one of the leading research universities focused on solar batteries, on the clean energy transition. And so I was able to host scientists and researchers and communicators from all over the world and really almost got a mini master's degree with the people that I met in learning about clean energy transition and what was possible specifically for ASU and for Arizona. So then I ran as a clean energy sustainability focused candidate in 2014 for the Tempe City Council. People told me I wouldn't win focused on sustainability, but I did win, and I ran with the idea of solarizing the city.
That's awesome. And ASU is obviously very pro-solar. Mm-hmm. I read that they've got 24 megawatts of solar on their 4 different campuses, which powers about 50% of their total energy. Were you there when they made that decision to go solar?
And I'm really proud of ASU for that and really walking the talk. And has the added benefit, all the solar installations of providing shade for parking, and that's definitely an added benefit.
Well, and it seems like such a no-brainer, especially here in Arizona, right? It's like, wouldn't you love every parking lot that you go to have shade during the summer and allow that shade to actually have energy being produced to power the buildings that you're going into? I mean, it just makes so much sense.
Makes complete sense. Yeah, so I was proud to have worked with the university where they really do walk the talk. And I was hoping that my city would also lead the way amongst cities in Arizona, but also in the country, because we truly could be the most sustainable region in the country. And we have such capacity. And I don't have to tell your audience how much capacity we have for solar in our state, but there have been decisions made at the utilities, whether it's a public power generator like SRP or a utility an investor-owned utility. There have been decisions made to really squelch distributed solar and rooftop solar.
It's been a rough environment for the last little while, and SRP is unfortunately kind of known as the most hostile solar utility company in the country. Now, I was around 10 years ago when it wasn't that case. That was back in the days of net metering, where it was the best in the country. And, it took a hard turn, and we've had to make a major adjustments, as solar advocates to still make it work. Luckily, it still is a great product, but we want it to be better. And so we're excited to try and get more solar-friendly people to that board to hopefully move that forward. Let me ask you one other thing. So after ASU, or kind of concurrently with ASU, you were with the city of Tempe. Mm-hmm. What were some of the things that you were trying to push with the city?
Well, one of the things I want to do is establish a group buying program for solar, because I know that a lot of the cost of actually putting up rooftop solar is, the company has to market and get that customer. And I thought, what if we did a request for proposal to all the solar companies and say, what's the best price that you can offer residents, or the best discount, let's say, and perhaps we could do it neighborhood by neighborhood, where you'd set up, an installer would set up shop and just move next door. There's a lot of savings there. Obviously, a lot lot of real savings that could accrue both to the solar installer and to the customer. And then, I was sworn in January 2015, and in February 2015, SRP came out with its rooftop solar killing rate plan. And that was just like a stab in the heart to me, because it really precluded a lot of the work I wanted to do with residential solar, although I still really pushed, and we made some strides with our city solar.
That's excellent. We're going to get into talking about the elections and some of the things that you want to do as a board member. Just as a personal background, so we can get to know Lauren, tell us something unique about yourself, and tell us one of your hobbies outside of what you've done professionally.
Sure, unique. JFK, John F. Kennedy, held me as a baby. My parents worked in his campaign in Massachusetts, and he showed up at the campaign office without a retinue, without a bodyguard or anything. Just showed up. And my dad was startled and went home to make him coffee. And it took my dad 45 minutes to make coffee because he had to do it with a percolator. It was rural Massachusetts. In the meantime, JFK spent 45 minutes alone with my mom. And he asked if he could hold me because he missed his daughter Caroline so much. And my family would say from that day on, that's when I became the political one in the family.
It started from the beginning.
I imprinted.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How about any hobbies?
I love animals. I love especially dogs, and so I'm just I'm very much involved with animal welfare issues as well.
Awesome. We'll continually always promoting good causes. So let's talk about this election as a broad sense. What would you want the public to know about an SRP election? What's important about it? What do they need to know?
Well, I ran for the Arizona Corporation Commission, which is the most important office in Arizona that no one's ever heard of. So now I'm running for the SRP board, which is even almost a lesser known office with very peculiar voting rules, very undemocratic voting rules. So I guess what I want people to know is only a few thousand people vote in this election in my district. I'm running for a district seat. Only less than 1% of people that can vote. So your vote is so important in this election.
You actually have a voice.
You have a voice. And if you elect the clean energy team and SRP for clean energy team, you'll be electing strong consumer advocates and those that are embracing the clean energy transition, not shying away from it, but embracing its potential for good jobs, for a healthy environment, and for benefits to consumers and to the solar industry as well.
Tell me why are you personally running? Why do you want to be, because there's a lot of people that have the same kind of passion. Why do you want to be an SRP board member?
Well, one reason I'm running for a district seat is it's acreage-based, and I am all about grassroots campaigning and knocking on doors. I wear out several pairs of shoes. So I'm running for that reason. I'm also running as a customer because I installed solar in my house. We have 2 solar installations, and I installed when we were actually incentivized. Mm-hmm. And later we became villainized by SRP. Like somehow we were doing the wrong thing. I probably spent more on solar than, when early adopters tend to spend more. And I'm grandfathered in for a couple more years. But it just doesn't make sense to me that in the Valley of the Sun, in the sunniest state in the nation, that we don't encourage rooftop solar, that we don't encourage distributed generation, which leads to more resilience in the system. So I have a personal reason. I want to see rooftop solar just embraced again. And I have a policy reason in that this is the second largest utility in the state of Arizona. Mm-hmm. The way SRP goes can really impact the other, the other investor-owned utilities. And I want to see, it used to be SRP was the better angel of the utilities. Right. Not so much.
Well, and it's interesting,
I think we
too,
need to change.
With the change they made, I mean, gosh, it's already been 10 years since they went away from that meeting. What they've done has impacted all of the states around Arizona, right? It's impacted the way that even APS has done solar. It impacted NV Energy within a couple years right after that. We're seeing different changes in California, but these solar rate plans that SRP implemented, it's obviously in the solar industry we feel like it's a poison that's going across the country that we want to be able to stifle and harness the power of the sun and provide people with a better way to get energy, a cleaner way, a sustainable way, and a way that can afford them savings.
Yeah, and my daughter, she's 33 years old. She bought a house in Tempe, and about 8 years ago. So she put solar on her house with the help from her parents, and her bill is about $10 a month. Now my bill isn't as low because I have a lot of glass, and I tried to make it more energy efficient, but in these times where housing is so expensive, to have a solar installed on your roof can really help. But right now, if you're an SRP customer, you're doing it, you may gain a little benefit, you'll gain benefit, but you're doing it to be a good person. It's the right thing to do. But for some people, it's not economically feasible, and we need to really, solarize our region. There's such
It used to be, when I started solar, I guess this is my 11th year in solar, it used to be that you could literally have a $0 SRP bill. That's what I had at my first house. And now, I mean, yes, you can still save a lot of money. We're still saving customers probably 50% of what they'd otherwise be spending, during those hot summer months particularly. But there's so much more benefit, if they would be more friendly to that. So let's move forward and say that you get elected, and all the other folks that we want to get elected, and we get a pro solar board. What are some of your agenda items? What are the possibilities for us as consumers and as the state if you guys can have your way?
SRP does a really good job in addressing reliability, but maybe not so much affordability. And also we need to address decarbonization goals and make those true and real. And we need to also look at equity in all of the SRP policies. So those are sort of the areas of influence I think we have. Unfortunately, the Resilience Plan, Sustainability Plan 2035 is going to be voted on in March, right before the election. And that's not a coincidence. So if we gain a majority on the Salt River Project Board, we can revisit that goal and have them look at carbon mass, and not just, and really do a true decarbonization plan for the utility. It's so important that we elect a majority to this SRP board, and we can really restore rooftop solar and embrace distributed energy and not investment in stranded resources that aren't good for the environment and aren't good for the economy.
What are some of the changes specifically to solar rate plans that you think that you could push through, or that you would hope to push through?
Adjusting, getting rid of the demand charge to really go back to pre-2015 plans. And we're not necessarily saying incentivize solar. We know there are really good rebates and tax credits out there right now, even up to 40% if your solar install uses a certain percentage of U.S.-made products. But there's an opportunity to go back to a plan and a policy that really incentivizes solar, incentivizes it in a monetary way to have the benefits of solar be shared by the utility and the utility and the installer and the customer.
Perfect.
So rooftop solar to me is like a number one priority once we get elected.
Do you think that net metering is a possibility to ever bring back?
I do, with a majority, right? We could capture a fragile majority, a 7-7. There's 14 board members. It could be 7-7 with the vice president making the deciding vote, or we could have a stronger majority. And it's also important to note that right now, the solar advocates on the board, there's 5 of the 14, right? So it's pretty much 9 versus 5. Right now, they'll get something given to them on a Sunday, and they'll have to decide on it on a Tuesday. Like, there's very little time for engagement. It's sort of a pro forma board of people that are dominated by it's dominated by farmers whose farms were and land was put up for collateral back in the early 20th century, but they're deciding electric rates. They're deciding energy policy, and their interest is in water, right? So that's the sort of the dirty secret of all of this, is that water policy too much directly impacts our electric policy and our electric bills. We probably pay too little for water.
We need to separate those two.
Yeah, we do. We pay too much for electricity, maybe too little for water under that equation.
That's really exciting. I hope you're hearing this if you're in the solar space here. The idea of bringing back net metering, what that does not only for our market and what that does for the solar market across the country. This is a huge, huge election. So we're going to talk about how to get involved and what we need to do to make sure that everybody can participate. Traditionally, there's very few people that vote. You mentioned, mostly because it's not advertised, and not everybody can vote. What do you want people to know about the actual SRP election process? How does that actually work?
Well, first of all, let's say you're a ratepayer in SRP territory. I won't say customer because you don't have a choice, but you're a ratepayer. How do you find out if you can vote? You have to actually call the corporate secretary, and they can look it up. There should be a way online. If the corporate secretary can look it up, you should be able to look up if you can vote. So less than 50% of SRP ratepayers can vote. The people that can't vote are renters. They still pay a bill. their renters, and people in the territories since 1937, because they haven't changed the map since 1937. And we've grown a tremendous amount, right? So first of all, you have to start off like only 50% have the possibility of even voting.
I'm in Gilbert, and where I live in Gilbert, I can't vote.
Yeah, and
yeah.
Ahwatukee, the entire town of Ahwatukee can't vote. Fountain Hills, Queen Creek, they can't vote at all. So they have no say over their rate plans.
So we need to focus on the area, the 50% of consumers that actually can vote.
That's right.
And they have, so we need to identify those areas,
Yeah.
right? Otherwise, they're having to call in and see if they're
Right.
in those areas. And say that again. Who do they need to call to find out if they're eligible?
They call the corporate secretary, and or send an email, and they can ask, if they're eligible to vote. There is a map. They have maps of the districts, but it's really hard if you're on the borders to really figure that out if you can vote. And then, they don't send out a letter or email saying, "Would you like to vote? Here's how you do." Or they don't send out the ballots. I believe they should send out the ballot to everyone that is qualified to vote. That's what we do in the city of Tempe with our elections, and we have a much higher turnout than if we didn't do that. So right now we have to go door to door and ask people, tell people about this possibility of voting, how important their vote is, and we get people signed up. Then once you do sign up, they send you a letter about a couple weeks later, and they say, "Are you sure you want to be on the permanent early voting list? Did you know you signed up, and this is permanent?" And they give you all these ways to get out of it. So actually, it's not permanent. You can get off any time, but it's, to me, a voter suppressive letter because they really don't want to have an increase in the turnout. It's less than 2%.
It's so interesting.
And if you had a city that had less than 2% voting, you'd say there's a crisis here. We need to really communicate with people about their rights to have input into SRP's policies. So we really try.
So
to
what I'm
encourage
hearing,
people.
though, this is not an encouraged participant
It's not.
election like our general elections.
Yeah.
We'll talk about more about that. So as solar companies, what do you need solar companies? We work with a lot of different competitors and friends in the industry. What do you think that the solar industry can do to help make sure that this panel of pro-solar candidates gets elected?
Well, March 22nd is a deadline to request a ballot, to be put on the permanent early voting list or request a ballot. So we would urge everyone in the solar industry, everyone who cares about the climate and cares about a strong economy for Arizona, to get word out to their customers, to their friends, to their family, that if you own land in SRP, that you can vote in this election. And that's such an important message. And that deadline's March 22nd. And then the ballots go out on March 6th, and we want to urge people to support the clean energy candidates. You will see other candidates, and they might even claim to be clean energy, but don't believe it. If it's not the SRP for Clean Energy team, it's not a clean energy candidate.
Okay, that's good to know. So if I register to vote, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to automatically send a ballot.
No, they will send a ballot in the mail.
Okay.
Only a few dozen people vote in person on
Okay.
election day at the SRP headquarters. Who even knows where the SRP headquarters is?
Yeah.
So you really do have to vote by mail.
In case you don't know where it is, it's over by the zoo, the Phoenix Zoo. It's a big old building over there. But
It's like the election process is
Yeah.
a zoo, so it's quite appropriate.
Yes.
It's so chaotic.
who are some of the other pro-solar candidates? So everybody remember this name, okay? Lauren Kuby.
Yes.
Who are some of the other candidates that we need to have at the forefront of our minds here?
So I mentioned before there's 14 board members. So of that, there's 10 district seats. They're acreage-based votes. You get a vote based on how many acres you have, which we'll explain. And then there's 4 at-large candidates. So every 2 years, we elect 2 at-large and 5 district seats. The 2 at-large seats going up this year, I'm so proud to say, Sandra Kennedy, who is my running mate with the Arizona Corporation Commission. She's been a warrior for solar and for renewable energy on the commission. She helped to establish the renewable energy standard years ago. She is running for one of those at-large seats, as is Casey Klaus, an attorney and someone who's been very involved in climate change action. So we have 2 amazing, dynamic women, real fierce consumer advocates and solar proponents. They're running for the at-large seats. And then there's 5 district seats, and we have 4 of 5 candidates set up for that. And I'm running for District 5, which is Northwest Tempe all the way to Levine.
Okay.
And so my district is kind of, dark defined. I'd say narrowly. It's a very wide district, but of course not many people vote. But it's important to know that my election, the SRP election that's at district-wide, is, everyone who owns SRP land can vote. But in my district, It's based on acreage. So if you have 500 acres, you get 500 votes. You get to decide. You have more of a voice with electric policy.
You're worth 500 people.
Yeah. If you have a vacant land of 50 acres, you get 50 votes to decide on energy policy, right?
That's crazy.
But if you have a quarter of an acre, you get a quarter of a vote.
Wow.
And to me, it's like, a 19th century concept that just makes no sense in a modern day democracy.
So tell me the deadlines again. When do we need to request the ballot? When do we need to register to vote? And does that automatically request the ballot at the same time?
Yeah. So March 6th is when the ballots are sent out. March 22nd is the last chance to request a ballot, March 22nd. And then March 28th is the last day you should return a ballot because you have to make sure it gets there. It has to be received by April 2nd.
Okay.
Then April 2nd is the election day. And that's when we'll decide. I believe that on April 3rd, we could wake up, and this will be a national story, that the largest public power generator in the U.S., which has only 3.4% solar in its portfolio, now has a majority of clean energy advocates serving as the board. And that is going to be a dramatic story and will really impact our economy.
Fires me up. That gives me goosebumps just you saying that. That it's such an exciting thing, and that we have the ability to do that, because this is different than APS. You're with APS, you're hiring a board that governs another board. Or, for APS in that case, you're having to get. It's much more difficult to move the needle. It's much more difficult, and it's a smaller board as well. Right. Whereas with this, every single your vote is going to directly impact what that board is going to actually look like. So an amazing opportunity that we have here. Do you have a call to action that you'd say, okay, solar advocates, solar industry, solar workers, here's what I need you to do?
We have an amazing opportunity in this election that happens on April 2nd. We can gain a majority in the SRP board, restore net metering, and really begin this transition to a clean energy economy in the SRP territory. So I'm asking you to contact your friends, your family, your customers, and let them know about this opportunity. First, to get them to request a ballot, which is so important. We have the opportunity to gain a majority and have a setting that will be encouraging of fair rates for customers, and will bring back net metering, and will encourage a clean energy transition in our state.
For people that don't have solar, what would you say to them?
Right. Solar is cheaper. We have this abundant resource in Arizona that we're not capitalizing on. We import fossil fuel, coal from Montana, gas from Texas and New Mexico. And it's important to note that it's more expensive to operate a coal plant, which SRP still has, than it is to open a new solar plant with battery storage than it is to maintain a coal plant. And SRP is heavily invested in coal to this day, and it continues to expand on natural gas, fossil fuel gas. This is wasteful of water, of energy, and we have to import these resources into our state. We should be using the resource of the sun that's here. It's cheaper and will lead to cheaper rates. It's so important for people to know. And I feel like the solar industry has been sort of hampered by this ideology that somehow it's going to be more expensive for customers. And we know that solar is cheaper.
So Lauren, if people want to find you online, if they have questions for you, if they want to donate, how do we get a hold of you?
I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and so is the SRP Clean Energy group. You can see all the candidates that are running, and we will help to identify which district you're in if that's a confusion. We are out there knocking doors and communicating with people right directly at the doors and talking to them about the importance of this election, and how if less than 2% of people vote, that means your vote is even more valuable than in a typical election. So you'll be hearing from us as we're really active and on the ground and really making the case for a clean energy economy.
We're excited to get you elected, Lauren, and thank you for being on the program today. Fusion Power obviously is very invested in this process, and so whatever we can do to help out, we're going to have all of our ground troops flyering and knocking doors. We're going to be blasting our emailing all of our customer base and texting and all that kind of stuff as well. So we're on your side. We're cheering you on.
Thank you so much.
We'll work together and get this board elected. We're excited about the future.
Just think how we're going to feel on April 3rd, the day after the election. I think we're going to make history in Arizona.
It's going to be awesome. Thank you for being part of the program today, viewers. If, again, you are an advocate for solar, please get involved, please register, please vote, and let's make this happen together. Have a great day.